Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to put your own samples into the Kontakt player in Pro Tools so you can make some tracks using your own unique sounds that you've either collected from an audio recording somewhere or that you've made here in the studio. So the first thing we want to do is get Pro Tools running, do a Command N to make a new session, create blank session. We're going to use 44.1 since this isn't for video. Either 24 or 32-bit, 32 bits higher quality. I'm going to save it in my folder, call it SamplerDemo. Now I want to make a track, so I'm going to go Command-Shift-N, make a stereo instrument track. And then, just like always, do it again, Command-Shift-N, stereo, master fader. If I flip over to the mix window, I'm going to insert Kontakt into this instrument track. So I'm going to click on one of the insert panels, multi-channel plugin, instrument, Kontakt stereo. And you'll see this is familiar. We've used this before. Remember, we've used the piano and the drums down here at the bottom. But this time we're not going to use a pre-built instrument from Kontakt. We're going to build one ourselves. So to do that, we're going to go up here to the top where it's like the logo bar that has the Native Instruments and Kontakt on it. Click where it has an icon of a little floppy drive and select New Instrument. It's going to open up a very small window that looks like the top part of all of these others with nothing below it. We need to go in and actually build this instrument. So in order to do that, you click the wrench, or the spanner as they call it in the UK. That opens up another panel that has a lot more options and ways of controlling things. You can do that on any of these other Kontakt instruments too. You can go in and tweak some various parameters on those pre-built instruments too. What we want to do now is assign the actual audio files to our keyboard. So in order to do that, we need to select Mapping Editor, which is right here in the middle. That brings up a window that shows another keyboard. This is the one that is used for the mapping, and a grid above it. What we're going to do is we're going to drag our samples onto this grid, and that will assign them to the keys on our keyboard. The other thing we want to do is make sure that MIDI through is on, because you won't get anything happening off the MIDI keyboard if MIDI through is not on. So we want to make sure that's on before we do anything else, because it'll freak us out if we don't get any sound happening. The next thing to do is to arrange your screen so that you can see both the Kontakt window and the folder that you have with your samples in it. So I'm going to drag the corner of the mix and the corner of the edit window over so that I can start to see the desktop. At the same time I'm looking at Pro Tools. Then I can find my folder with my samples in it and arrange it so that I can drag from the folder right into Kontakt. So I'm going to just play a little joke here, and I think you'll get it. So I'm going to take this sample that I made in Rebirth years ago, if anybody remembers the Rebirth software. I'm going to drag it and drop it here onto the grid that assigns it to the keys. Now C3 is middle C on the keyboard, and C0 is the lowest C on a regular 88 key keyboard. So this is going to be almost all the way down to the bottom of the keys. If you want to go up on the high end of the keyboard, you need to slide it over so you can see that. I've assigned this rhythm loop to these keys that run down from middle C down to the G. I'm going to drag it further all the way down to the bottom to the low C. What this does is it transposes that sample across all of these notes. The key that you see highlighted is the key that is non-transposed. In other words, if I want to hear this loop as it was originally recorded, I would play this G. So I'm going to do what Deadmau5 says. I'm going to say this is the cardinal sin of electronic dance music. So as I play that sample further on down, you'll see that it changes pitch. And if I play higher than G, it plays faster than normal. This is what it's supposed to sound like. Okay, that was a little fun. Yeah, a little. If you want to make it go away, just again highlight it, hit the backspace key to delete. So these other samples are things that I made, as you can see, back in 2005. I made a project that I used a bunch of sounds off an old Nokia cell phone. So I'm going to just drag a bunch of these onto the keyboard and just distribute them so that I can play them in a rhythm. And I'm going to be real quick at this, so it's not going to be anything real precise, but I'm just going to do it. So I'm going to drop these down starting on middle C. And because I want to be able to play this sort of like a beat, I'm going to make sure that it's assigned just to the white keys, or it's going to be centered on white keys. And like I said, I'm being totally random about this, just to kind of give you a quick demo of what you possibly might want to do. All right, there's about what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cool. It's kind of fun. You can also drag and drop a bunch of them all at once across the keyboard, but you'll notice that they actually distribute across a fairly wide range, which if you're trying to do what I was doing, which was have a bunch of different sounds that I could play in a rhythm, this might not be the mapping that you'd want. So doing a group at a time doesn't give you as much control over the actual mapping of each individual sample. Some samples, especially the ones that you get in these professional sample libraries, they have a different sample according to the velocity. In other words, how hard you hit the key, it plays a different sound. Obviously, you hit a piano softer, it's going to be a different timbre, it's going to require a different sample than if you hit the piano hard. So the way to do that is to drag the top part of these samples down, and so then you would have to have a soft, medium loud, and hard version of the sample, and you would drop them into these grids vertically. If you click on the wave editor, it opens up another panel that allows you to go in and deal with the looping. You can move the start and end points of the sample. So as I play C2 on the key, it's playing a shorter part of the sample than if I have the end all the way out here. If I click down here on sample loop, I'll be able to define the point where the sample loops around and plays back as long as I hold the keyboard key down. So you've noticed up until now with all these samples that I dropped in, including the rebirth one, it just played one shot. In other words, it played until the end and then it stopped. And you do sometimes want that to happen, but other times you want it to be able to loop or continually play. So we need to define a loop for each of our samples. A lot of times it's pretty much the whole loop. So depending on the kind of sound you're working on, that obvious looping, in other words, you can hear it beginning and ending, is desirable. But in other cases, you want to try to find a way to make the loop more transparent, and that really is the trick. Some loops just really won't ever loop completely without any without being obvious. What you want to do is you want to try and match up the peaks and the troughs. So if my loop starts at the low point, I want to have the loop end at a loop point. You don't want to have it start at a low point and end at a high point. That's going to be the most obvious. So it takes some tweaking. Like I said, some of them won't loop as easily as others. You may need to zoom in really tight in order to find out where the best place to loop is what's called a zero crossing, which is where the sample waveform crosses the 0 point. That's the spot where it'll be least obvious, and you can see that I didn't match up there, so I want to try and find a spot here towards the end where it hits a 0 point, a zero crossing. Let's see what that sounds like. At least it's not clicking now. The clicking comes from the wave shape immediately changing from, let's say, a high, the top of its amplitude, to the bottom, or someplace where there's a drastic change immediately. That'll make a click. You can hear the click because you're basically hearing the waveform instantly change from the high point to the low point. So it takes a little bit of tweaking. Depending on what you want to do, you may not even need to have a loop. In the cell phone piece that I did, kind of like what I just played you a few minutes ago, it was all just a bunch of one-shot rhythmic samples, and if that's what you're doing, that's fine. Or if you're doing the dead mouse EDM thing, and you've just got a loop that's transposed way down and kind of runs in the background, you can just keep re-triggering it each time. Okay, that's about it. So once you're done, you want to do a save, because if you don't save it, it's not going to stick around for your session. So again, go up to the top where the little floppy icon is and do a save edited instrument. I'm going to put it in my folder, in the SamplerDemo folder. I'm going to call it the cell phone. So now I've built this instrument. It works in this session, but it also could be loaded into any other session where I want to use this instrument too. Okay, that's it. Have some fun. It's kind of neat. See you. Bye.